everyone, it's Carolyn here to share another message today. It's not a channel from the Light Keepers, but what they'll do, as I've done in a few videos in the recent past, is have them channel through me as I'm talking about this. They typically will give words and phrases as I'm actually speaking as well, and then sometimes I'll get talking really fast and you'll know I'm channeling. I will try to slow that down though. But what I want to talk about today is the awakening journey of becoming the true one with mind, body, and soul. And I'm going to talk about how we can start to notice the difference when we are working from the totality of who we are and not in separate pieces of us. So with that today, thank you for everybody who always joins me. Thank you to those of you who are new and joining me for the first time. I'm Carolyn. I'm a distance energy healer. I'm a channel, and I'm a spiritual awakening mentor. And I offer this YouTube channel for your awakening journey support. So if you'd like to join me further, I do have an email list that you can subscribe to, but first it offers you a gift video on how to create flow in your body for health and wellness, which is so important during this journey, and even more so now as we're coming into these really tough December energies and then moving into 2020. So just know the energies are going to be coming your way. And this will help you understand flow in your body and things that you can do to help yourself. So join me, click, it will take you to more free content. I definitely always offer a weekly channel, and you'll be able to receive that as well as other content as I post it. So thank you so much for joining me today. So I'm going to get going on this and really talk about this deep connection of the one that we are becoming as we awaken. So, okay, so now they just said, we want you to say what we say all the time about the mind, body, and soul. And when they first said this to me, because on occasion they'll bring this into people's channels, it was like, whoa, because we're taught something different. And what they say is it's the Holy Trinity, mind, body, and soul. Well, we've been taught very differently if you were brought up in traditional religion, but it's the mind, body, and soul of us. And so they were laughing about this, because of course I see them too. They're laughing about this and saying, we really want you to go ahead and just say this right away. And so essentially what we're talking about is that oneness, the mind, body, and soul, the Holy Trinity of who we are. And during the awakening, it's about finding all of that out. Now, what I want to talk about is how we typically have lived in humankind. Most of us. Not all of us, most of us, though. So we have our mind, all right, which in my terms, when I talk about mind, I'm also talking about ego, okay? So typically what we've done to one degree or another is we've lived a life from our mind, from our ego, from the thinker's perspective, from externalizing, because oftentimes the ego, the mind, will externalize. In other words, everything outside of us is what defines us. Everything outside of us is how we make our choices. And you can think about a thousand examples of that where, you're kind of led by your nose by how others think you should be, what your life should be. You can even look at parents, family, friends, culture, society. It goes on and on. Religion. Oh my gosh, it can be so overwhelming. And then we get this heavy layer around us of who we think we're supposed to be. Because guess what? Our human self, our mind self, our ego self, has been looking for all the answers outside. Now, I am not dissing the mind because, oh my gosh, there's the beautiful side of that. It makes us human. It brings in all the thinking, all the considering, all the protection too, because we do have to make choices. We do have to decide. And our ego is there to help us through this human life. So I'm not talking about that part of this. I'm talking about the part that takes us to a place that doesn't allow us to define ourselves. And the ego will often do this. It will look to the outside, not to the inner you, to be able to define who you are. You all have examples of this. I can guarantee it. We all have it to one degree or another. We all know people who are so unconscious, and that might have been us at one time or another. I wouldn't doubt that we've all had huge moments of living fully unconsciously, whether it be, for an evening out or for a good chunk of our lives. So we all understand that. But we also know people who fully live from that ego place, that unconscious state. And again, I'm not judging them. I'm just giving you examples because you can start thinking about this from the perspective of who you know, how you've lived, and be able to understand that what this is very often those people, us, are defined by the outside circumstances. We're acting out because okay, good example is, oh God, I don't, you know what they just said? Big man on campus. I said, what? They said, use the example, big man on campus. And I said, okay. And so I have this conversation inside my head as I'm talking to, which is kind of trippy, but that's how it works for me. So anyway, we all know how that idea of thinking we're super special, or someone thinks they're super special and they come across and they're big men on campus. I don't know why they gave me that, but you know what I'm talking about, that idea of having to toot your own horn, always having to be out there in big, bold display, always having to build yourself up and get the goods from the outside world. That's what this is about, okay? So oftentimes when we see those displays, it's a creation of, okay, they just said from the ego, you. The creation of who you are defined from the outside, and the ego often will do this to us, okay? So I don't know if their example of big man on campus was really relevant, but it's kind of funny. But that idea, and I think you all understand that we've all been there where we're looking to define who we are from the outside world. Whether that be, particularly when we're younger, oh my gosh, teenage years can be so difficult for that. College years can also even be difficult. And then, hopefully we move into a more conscious state, but many of us don't. And we see that all around us. And we've also lived that. So enough of that. But I hope you understand now, like how that ego can display itself. And then what it does is, what we do is we end up living there outside of ourselves, defining ourselves from, they just said an inauthentic expression of who you are. Okay, right. So we're going to get to that. We're going to get to what is the authentic expression, which I think you all probably kind of know. But let's talk about the body first. So we've got the body. So I really can relate to this one. All right. I've always appreciated my body for it as a tool. Okay. I've talked about this before, but remember, it's part of the Holy Trinity. So here we are treating it often as a tool. We see a lot of people do that, right? We've all been through it one way or another. Or, okay, let me just give you some examples. When I was growing up, I was so indulgent in, and this is like starting at age 13, women's magazines. And some of you are going to remember these names because they don't exist any longer. Mademoiselle, Glamour, Vogue. Oh my God, I subscribed to them all. 17 magazine. I guess some of those are still out there. Anyway, oh my gosh, I let that define who I should be as a body. Okay, forget the mind part, forget the soul part, because we're not even hitting on the soul yet. What happened was I started defining like kind of the way I should look by those magazines. Again, externalizing things. I looked at my body as a tool in sports. I was a competitive tennis player. I mean, I loved it. I didn't beat myself up, but I never had a connection to my body in a soulful way. I knew my body. I knew how it acted. I knew how it behaved. I knew what it needed, but I still was separate from it. I used it. Okay, they're showing me now, and this is what they always show me, is the racehorse whipping the horse, and you're on the back of the horse, and the horse is your body. Okay, so you're whipping the horse. Yeah, because I wanted it to do its thing in playing tennis, and then I was involved in a gazillion other sports competitively through school. That said, that can turn into great dysfunction when we are not connected to our body in a healthy way. We see all kinds of things happening, and I'm fortunate none of this happened to me. Anorexia, bulimia, which can also come from other places. Excessive anything with your body, like excessive exercising. Now, I went through that a few years ago when I picked tennis up again. Again, I was a competitive tennis player when I was younger. I spent dozens of years not playing and then picked it up again 6 years ago. I was obsessed to the point of I lost 15 pounds like overnight. Again, weight was a thing for me, always has been. Like, better watch your weight, because that comes from the women's magazines and that definition of what women should look like. So again, disconnected from the body. And so what I was doing was, and again, this is just a few years ago, so before my awakening though, which I guess is not an excuse, but the point is I literally would play 5 times a week in 100-degree heat an hour and a half, 2 hours. Oh my gosh. Now, I was keeping up with it, but my poor body, I never asked my body if I wanted to do this. I was just driven to do it. Coming from the ego mind, right? Had to feel a certain way, wanted to look a certain way, wanted to stay active and fit like I have pretty much always been. But this was an obsession. It was a super obsession. I didn't know that. Well, I have done a couple of videos recently on my adjustment to understanding how to communicate with my body. And during the awakening, this is something that starts to happen. And if it doesn't, you're going to want to consciously start thinking about this. What is your relationship to your body? Again, part of the Holy Trinity. What is your relationship? Because you're going to be driven to connect with it in a way you never have been. Because guess what? Your body is the vessel you travel in this awakening journey. And with all of the shifts and changes in ourselves, with the ascension, with the energies, you can go on and on. The clearing of past lives. Oh, your body is going to say, hello, hello. For the first time, you're going to go, oh, you're a consciousness. Oh, okay. If I connect with you, with my mind, with my human self, connect with you in a different way, not see you as the tool, not see you as just, I can abuse you and not think about you and feed you anything I want, not exercise, not, put bad things into myself. When you start coming from a different place in the awakening, because the body is going to smack you down. It's going to smack you down if you've not been taking care of it. And most of us have been through that. And you can argue, oh, well, I was taking care of my body. No, I wasn't. I was overdoing everything. So you can have both extremes, right? But during the awakening, your body is going to say, hello. It's time for me to speak to you in a way you've never been spoken to. And you're going to get all kinds of things. I just did a video on this too, about what's happening with December energies and what I have been through. You're going to get ill. There are going to be weird illnesses. There are going to be weird cellular adjustments that are going to come your way. And you're going to feel like it's otherworldly. I've always called it galactic. Like it kind of fits into the human construct of what sickness is, but it doesn't. Additionally, you're going to be clearing past lives. Your body is talking to you. And so what I have said before is, start the conversation. Get that next part of the Holy Trinity together as you're coming through the awakening and start talking literally out loud. I do this, I've told you this before in other videos, where in the morning, the very first thing I do is I look in the mirror with all my glory and I say good morning to my mind. I say good morning to my body, and I actually talk to them individually. I ask how they're doing. Forget whether you hear an answer or not. Again, I hear. So I hear them because they're consciousnesses within us, all right? So talk to your body, love your body, start forming that relationship. Now, loving your body is a whole nother thing. That's a journey, okay? Connect with your body. How does it feel? What is it telling you in the things that it's presenting to you each day? Start connecting. Now, we're at all different degrees of that. Some of us are super, super hyper connected. Me, okay? So I've had to kind of chill out in that, but connect from a different perspective. Most of us have never connected from a soulful perspective, getting to know who we are as a body and embracing it and loving this beautiful body that we're journeying in. Okay, so there you go. So now we've got the mind, we've got the body, and then during the awakening journey, the soulful connection is the going inside. Again, it's the not living from the outside external perspective, defining who we are. And when I think about living like that, which I did for many years, many years, it's exhausting. It is exhausting. But when you turn yourself inward, that's where all the peace comes from. And you start shedding those layers of what the external world wants from you. And that is a huge journey. In fact, right now I'm getting, they're saying the reason you're starting to feel fatigued talking about this is because thoughts are things. And in the mere fact that I'm talking about this, I feel that energy of having lived externally so long. And right now I'm like really exhausted feeling this. And so that's what they're saying is as we think about these things, we're going to feel this again. So it's actually kind of good for us to relive those things and feel that again. But now we're starting to, in the awakening, come from the soulful perspective. And that's the going inward, which is why my spirit team and anybody I ever do a session for typically will talk about the foundational component of the awakening is some form of a quiet meditation process. Define meditation any way you want. I've already talked a lot about that. It's a big thing for me. It's a foundational component of what I talk about all the time. But again, that allows you to turn that external focus of where you've been most of your life, one degree or another, inward. So now the awakening is about taking us inward. And as we go inward with that soulful practice, that quiet time, the time with ourselves, the walking out in nature, the time with ourselves, because so many of us have never allowed that. And lots of times it's scary. If we have never offered ourselves this time and now all of a sudden you're blasted wide awake with the awakening will have a phase in it where you are going to be nearly forced to want to be alone. Now, to a degree, it comes naturally, but for those of us who are used to being around a multitude of people all the time and never spending time with yourself, it's going to be uncomfortable. So this is this journey into the inner you, okay? And with it, and I could talk all day long about all these practices and things that you could do to get there, but that's not what this video is about. This video is about how the mind, body, and soul come together as one. And as you start taking that journey of connecting all three together, the oneness of you starts showing up, and you're coming from the inside of you. You've made the connection with the body because now you're treating it differently. You're treating it as its own consciousness, as the vessel you travel in. You're treating the mind, the ego, with respect and not with distaste and with disgust and that you want to banish it because it's part of you. You bring it along for the journey, but you're coming from the inside of you, the soulful space of you, because now during the awakening, you have been brought back inside. And that's now where you're going to create from for everything. Everything is going to come from there. We no longer are defining ourselves from what the outside world wants. Sure, we can learn and observe and be part of it. Doesn't mean we're not a part of it. But now we come from the space of the internal knowing of who we are. The mind, body, and soul. As my crew says, the Holy Trinity. They just said that has been misinterpreted for eons. We won't go into religion and everything, but most of us understand a lot of that as we go through the awakening. We start opening up to that. So I really would ask you to start looking at yourself differently. That oneness of how the three become the one, and that process of doing that in the awakening, because this is what the awakening is about. And then from there, we create out of that depth of who we are as that oneness. So I hope you have enjoyed this video today and that it leads you into really contemplating and thinking about this for yourself, because this is a deep topic and I could go on and on about each piece of this, but this should give you a step forward in how you can become the oneness that you desire and your soul desires in this awakening journey, really connecting in and being the one that you truly are. So thank you again so much for joining me. And as always, I will reference purplerainhealing.com, where you can see my services of spiritual awakening mentoring, where I help launch you forward on your awakening journey and help you work through some of the tough things while I channel information for your awakening journey. And then I also offer channeled messages and distance energy healing and channeled messages. So check it out. Connect with me if you're interested. And again, I thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you in the next video.